recently against the backdrop of those horrors that are happening to the population at the Gaza Strip, against the backdrop of the humanitarian disaster, the Western leaders now they finally start making statements saying that they are ready to recognize the Palestinian state. President Macron made such a statement. Starmer made a similar statement. I believe the Canadian Prime Minister and the Australians made similar statements. And they all said, and it happened 2 weeks ago, they all said that we're thinking that at the UN General Assembly we will declare the recognition of the Palestinian state. The General Assembly is going to take place during the last week of September, and when they were making the statements, it was still 2 months until the General Assembly. So I have a question. If your diplomacy, if your foreign policy now says that you cannot tolerate this anymore and to put an end to all these humanitarian tragedies, you think that you need to recognize the Palestinian state, as you were supposed to do a long time ago, because there is the UN resolution. Why do you need to wait for these 2 months? Why don't you do it immediately? And I have a suspicion that all these beautiful statements, all these beautiful words that soon, a couple of months later, we will recognize the Palestinian state, they are making this statement because they have this diplomatic hope that by the time when they have to fulfill this obligation to recognize the Palestinian state, there will be nothing to recognize. I believe this is the essence of the EU diplomacy in the Middle East. And as for the Ukrainian situation, I don't see any diplomacy there on their behalf.
Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel, alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before. I've always said that we will recognize a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza. It's driven today by two things. Firstly, the context in the intolerable situation in Gaza, which is getting worse by the day, but also because of the concern that the very possibility of a two-state solution is reducing, and therefore it is very important to be seen in that context as a very important contribution to what I hope will be an alleviation of the situation on the ground, because I'm acutely aware that what needs to happen urgently is that aid into Gaza at speed and at volume, and that ceasefire that can open the way for a political process. So this is a decision taken by this government in the context of today, and after a meeting with my cabinet just earlier this afternoon.
Earlier today, I convened a cabinet meeting to do two things. One, provide an update on the state of negotiations with the United States, and secondly, to discuss the situation in the Middle East. With respect to the first, the trade negotiations with the U.S., as you know, we're seeking the best deal for Canadians. We have not yet reached that deal. Negotiations will continue until we do. Minister LeBlanc and senior officials will remain in Washington in pursuit of that goal. The focus of our meeting was really the Middle East. The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable. Earlier this week, the Minister of Foreign Affairs represented Canada at the UN high-level conference on a two-state solution in New York. In recent days, I've spoken with our allies, including President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, President von der Leyen. I've also had a number of discussions with our ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray. International cooperation is essential to securing lasting peace and stability in the Middle East, and Canada will do its best to help lead that effort. Canada has long been committed to a two-state solution. An independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security. For decades, it was hoped that this outcome would be achieved as part of a peace process built around a negotiated settlement between the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority. Regrettably, this approach is no longer tenable. Prospects for a two-state solution have been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people, culminating in the heinous attack of October 7, 2023, and the terrorist organization Hamas's long-standing violent rejection of Israel's right to exist and its rejection of a two-state solution. For the reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the State of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026 in which Hamas can play no part, and to demilitarize the Palestinian state. Canada will increase its efforts in supporting strong democratic governance in Palestine and the contributions of its people to a more peaceful and hopeful future.